Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thank you for watching. So, I've got guys an update on a major Arctic blast that we're anticipating to move into the central and eastern United States. This will usher in likely the coldest air of this winter, as we are also tracking a major winter storm threat to follow. I've got all the details coming right up. But so thank you for joining me here on this Wednesday evening. We have a lot to talk about in this video. We're going to go over, once again, all the latest details on your major Arctic blasts, those very hazardous temperatures. We're going to be talking about how low they could get, how to stay prepared. We're also going to be talking about, obviously, just that snow potential that is lingering. Also for areas very far south that did just recently get in on a pretty rare winter storm. I think another chance for that is coming up, and we're not gonna hype things up on this channel, but I'm being serious here. We actually could have another threat foreseeing a pretty far south heading snowstorm. So starting out here, take a look at your current radar. You have two things going on right now. You can see number one out here in the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes region. You do have a pretty weak Clipper system moving through, producing a little bit of snowfall across sections of Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan. This will likely continue to approach the Ohio Valley area as well as the rest of the Great Lakes. All right, still producing a lot of that snowfall out there. So that will likely drop about 2 to 4 inches at best, but really just a couple inches of snow for some of these areas. Nothing too crazy other than that. Okay, you also do have a little bit of lake effect snow that's still lingering here across sections of upstate New York. This has actually been producing some snow squalls down the line. So we actually did see a snow squall in the Binghamton, New York area. I know that it caused a lot of very low visibility there. And just some pretty hazardous travel. So still kind of monitoring that event, as that has been producing feet of snow, and we actually still do have those those lake effect snow warnings out there. But for the third part of this segment of the update, you can actually see we also do have some showers and storms that have been rumbling through coastal regions of Texas and Louisiana across the Gulf Coast here. Okay, this is basically just a lot of moisture that's lingering out here, and this will eventually connect with either a trough or some piece of energy that could end up flying through the central United States over the next couple of days. And if that connection does happen, that's where we're going to get our major winter storm from. So we're going to move on here to our alerts. And you can see, really, we don't have much going on, but we do have some winter weather advisories going out for sections of western PA into eastern Ohio. You also have some winter storm warnings going out for sections of West Virginia there. So that's mainly just going to be for those mountainous regions, right? Definitely those, lower lying areas of elevation probably going to stay as just, light to moderate snowfall there. But a couple inches is definitely possible for those areas that do have those winter weather advisories. But that is for that Clipper system that is moving through. Once again, nothing too much, but definitely a couple inches of snow are possible. So if you happen to be tuning in for this region, let me know what you guys pick up. It's going to be pretty interesting to see. I do think some areas could slightly overperform, but really, once again, nothing too much other than that. You still do have right around the Lake Erie area, just to the east of there. This is going out for a couple counties out there in extreme western New York State. All right, still some lake effect snow warnings from that lingering lake effect snow. Obviously, those heavy bands are moving through. We've been seeing 40 to 50 dBz's of lake effect snow. I know feet of snow have fallen already, especially in the Buffalo area. So, still definitely watch out and stay prepared. Just make sure you are also staying extra, weather aware if you're on those roadways, because definitely slick travel, I'd say, is possible with that. So definitely make sure that you're being extra careful. All right. And if you take a look also out here in Montana, we do have high wind warnings, as we have been talking about some pretty gusty conditions over the past couple of days. All right. You do have dense fog advisories going out for sections of, southern Washington State into southwestern Oregon, or Idaho there. And then finally, you also do have air quality alerts, I believe, for sections of Southern California, because obviously you've got that fog that smoke from those wildfires. Pretty terrible stuff. But there's your red flag warning. I believe it is still a PDS, particularly dangerous situation red flag warning. That is, they only issue those in the most critical days for fire spread, and usually they only issue those for days that where we actually do have active wildfires, but also the fact that they could easily spread. And that's what we've been seeing. So I believe the Palisades fire, it's still growing. I think it's still under 20% contained, but they are starting to, put a little bit of a dent into getting those fires under control. But the death toll is starting to rise, and I'm afraid to say, but I think that fire is going to spread. Luckily, I can confirm that the downtown Los Angeles area has been untouched from these fires, but they're basically what's happening is there's a whole circle. The Los Angeles is right in the middle of a circle of fires. On the perimeter of that circle, there's fires. You have the Eaton Fire, Palisades, and a couple other minor fires. All right, a lot of them have been mostly, kind of put out, but there are still definitely some lingering brush fires. So definitely very, very hazardous conditions out there. But I will say, I do think that things may get a little bit better over the next couple days. But regardless, just please, 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 if you happen to be living in this area, make sure you're taking all evacuation seriously. If you do get put under an evacuation order, you got to get out. You've seen the destruction that these fires can cause. I mean, some of these photos, it looks like tornado damage just because these homes are pretty much slabbed. I mean, you can't even tell what was there anymore because it's completely burnt down to the ground. So, it's just pretty wild stuff there. So, we're going to be talking about our cold weather now. And you're take a look here. You can actually see, if you're a winter weather fan, you're probably getting excited about this. We have a 80 to 90% chance of below average temperatures here from the Climate Prediction Center, and this is a huge below average chance for the country here, just because. I mean, this is also including the western United States a little bit too. I mean, you can see really it's centered over the southern and eastern United States. Okay, this is going to be a very widespread Arctic blast, and that's why people are calling this an Arctic outbreak. And really, what's happening is the polar vortex is just completely collapsing on us. It got very, very weak, and when the polar jet stream starts to get very, very wavy, it starts to dip, and we're pretty much seeing it completely collapse into the United States. So that's what we're seeing here. All right, but you have a huge below average spot. This is your 80 to 90% chance of seeing below average temperatures all the way from Texas up into southern New England and into the Ohio Valley northeast there. Okay, still the entire eastern United States is highlighted in that blue shade. All right, that's pretty much where we have a pretty good chance of seeing below average temperatures. All right, I know it says near normal, but this is because basically what's happening here is this Arctic blast is advancing, so it will still definitely be well below average for these areas. It's just in the northern United States. It's just that it's already going to be past you guys by the time we get into this time frame here, but still definitely I'd say right around 100% chance of seeing below average temperatures if you're somewhere inside of this area that I just highlighted there. But I just want to make sure you guys understand that you're not being left out or anything. So you also do have, I want to note that you do have a very high chance for seeing above average temperatures in Alaska. I know there's probably zero people watching from Alaska, but I want to note that because the ridge, all that, warmer air and all that high pressure, or just that warm air in general, has moved so far north that it's pretty much stuck all the way up into far northern and western Canada, even into Alaska there. So that's pretty crazy to see. And so everything's kind of flip flopped here. And so I believe we call this a negative EPO phase here. I mean, there's a lot to it, but it's pretty wild stuff that we're seeing here. So you go over to the GFS. We're going to be taking a look at your temperature anomalies, and this is going to show us once again, where we're going to see above average temperatures and where we're going to see below average temperatures. So if you take this out, here comes that major Arctic blast. All right, this is what we're talking about here. You are not getting left out. You're in the northern United States. I mean, look at this in Montana. We're already seeing a spot of well below. I mean, this is below 28 degrees below average here, but you can already see this cold front is just massive. I mean, this is extending all the way from Texas to up back into Canada here, but we are just seeing an absolute train of cold air that's diving down into the central United States. We are seeing those temperatures plummet. If you're in the Dakotas, if you're in Montana, it's going to get dangerously cold. Those wind chills will be likely as low as negative 50 degrees. I mean, it's just going to be insane. I don't think we've seen an Arctic blast like this, honestly, since February of last winter. I don't know if you guys remember that, but we had, I believe, negative 60-degree wind chills in Montana that year. I don't think I've ever seen a Arctic blast this aggressive since then. So just kind of give you guys some context as to how intense this actually is. But this is just all to make sure that all of you are taking this seriously, because this is probably going to be impacting you just because of how big it is. But you can see, I mean, this is just, I mean, all I gotta say, it's putting in so much cold air in the United States, is like filling the entire United States up with below average temperatures. But you can see that quickly advances, and look at this frame here, where you can see just all these areas highlighted in pink. All right, this is at least 15 degrees below average. I mean, if you're in these, tan shades, tannish pink shades right here, I mean, this is when you're approaching like 25 to 30 degrees below average. And it's wintertime, and this is when it's supposed to be the coldest air of the season for Montana. So if it's supposed to be right around zero for your high, think about what 30 to 40 degrees below average is. I mean, you're talking about actual temperatures that could be as low as negative 30 degrees in, the worst case scenarios here. So, I mean, this is just kind of unfathomable cold air if you're talking about, the Dakotas and the extreme northern United States there. But that will continue to move off to the east, and still by the 22nd, I mean, you can see a lot of the eastern United States highlighted in these bright colors of pink and tan here. This is where we're still seeing those temperatures likely around 20 plus degrees below average there. So really, really extensive Arctic blast that we're seeing there. And more cold air could definitely fall. We're getting a little bit far out here, but you can see the GFS is picking up on another signal of another Arctic blast, not as intense, but I mean, this if you were to get like a perfect time frame and a perfect setup for snowfall, this is that setup, okay? Because this is easily going to be the coldest air of the winter. And you're in a very, very favorable phase here for snowstorms. As long as you get that, active Pacific jet stream to really kick in, things are going to get very, 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 very active here as far as snowfall activity. So pretty wild stuff on the GFS there. So if you look at this from an actual like a temperature standpoint, if you look at this from if you look at this at from the wind chill map here, this is basically showing us how cold the wind is making it feel outside. So this is not the actual temperature. This is just the real feel, if you want to put it that way. But this is kind of also going to give you guys an idea of how major this Arctic blast is. Also, look at the core of that Arctic blast. I know this is up in Canada, but I mean, negative 60 degrees is just absolutely insane. I mean, you're going to get hypothermia within 10 minutes or less with that cold air, but that is going to be moving into the United States. I don't think it's going to be that intense, but I mean, look at North Dakota already. North Dakota already, it's feeling like it's 45 degrees below zero, which I think is going to be enough to cancel schools. That's going to cause major, pipe damage. I mean, this is just going to be a really, really bad scenario here, but this is bitterly cold out here if you're in northern Minnesota, but anywhere in the northern tier of the country, I mean, the mountainous regions, I mean, everybody out here is going to be absolutely frigid as we go into this weekend and into early next week. I mean, but you can see, I mean, this is just an insane frame here. If you want to look at where your, freezing mark is, your freezing mark is in the Gulf Coast, which is just absolutely insane. But I mean, you have a heck ton of cold air. I mean, you're seeing some areas, pretty far south. I mean, you're seeing areas in Tennessee. I mean, it feels like you're in the single digits. I mean, this is just absolutely crazy. But how cold does it actually get at the very worst of it? If you're talking about the peak intensity, remember that these are not the actual temperatures. This is what it feels like outside. So still useful tool to look at. I mean, if you're taking a look at, like, let's see, North Dakota here, I mean, you're getting close to negative 50 degrees. So all I gotta say is that this is just going to be a very historic Arctic blast. This will likely produce, record-breaking temperatures for some of these areas out here, but it's going to feel very, very cold as we get into our weekend. This is easily, once again, going to be the coldest kind of time frame that we have all winter long here. But once again, also behind it, we could have another Arctic blast, not as intense, but things are definitely going to get very, very cold. Things are going to get dangerously cold, and this is obviously going to cause major pipe damage and stuff like that. So really, really not good stuff that we're seeing here. But if you take a look, we're going to look at the GFS and the European model for upcoming snowstorms, because obviously if you get cold air, I mean, that pretty much means that with any precipitation, you're probably going to see snowfall, and I think that's exactly what we're going to see in the United States, as long as we get that cold air to really set in, as long as also we get a piece of energy to start producing precipitation here. So we'll take this out to around the 20th. This is, I believe, Sunday night into Monday morning here. Okay, look how far south our 540 line. Our 540 line is in the Gulf Coast. I mean, you have the entire central and eastern United States pretty much below freezing at this point. You have 1,052 millibar high pressure. You have extremely high pressure over southern Canada. I mean, this is a textbook Arctic blast, and this is going to be hanging around for a while. And already before you know it, okay, right around the 23rd, which I believe is a week out from tomorrow, or I believe it's a week out from today. Okay, we have a signal for a snowstorm here across sections of the southern United States. I will say this has been very interesting. The models have been picking up on this. The GFS has been spitting out different scenarios, but if you look at this one of the GFSs, the 18Z, it does bring a pretty good swath of snowfall across the eastern United States down into sections of the Midwest, all the way into Arkansas, and then a little bit of a possible severe weather threat into Texas. I also do think severe weather definitely could ramp up over the next couple of days as long as we get a little bit of a ridge to start spiking here, and we will see that. Let me get this off your screen, but kind of just to show you guys, we're going to need some kind of moisture, so obviously that warm air can't stay too far south, and, everything's just going to be snow. We're going to have to see that ridge start to bump up, so as long as we get the dew points and the warm enough temperatures, we could have an isolated pocket of possible severe weather that we will have to watch about right around next weekend into next week. Or this weekend and next week. I really do think we're going to see that severe weather threat possibly ramp up there. Okay, but in this case of the GFS, this I believe is the second Arctic blast that moves in. We do get that low to ride very, very far south. This delivers a pretty quick hitting winter storm for, extreme northern Mississippi, Alabama, really north of Dixie Alley here. We see that heavy snow moving across sections of Tennessee, the Ohio Valley, and eventually in the northeast, you have a little bit of freezing rain and icing across North Carolina into Virginia. And that low pressure moves very far south and then kind of rides up the East Coast, stays a little bit too far inland for I-95 to really, get a score here. But we do see a pretty nice line of icing that starts to spread from, New England down into the Delmarva region. But it turns out to be a very significant interior northeast snowfall event here that would likely produce, multiple inches of snow. And on the backside, still more cold air moving in, but that continues to kind of move into the northeastern United States and producing a lot of heavy snowfall on the backside here in the sections of Maine and once again the interior northeast with that. Okay, so that's a pretty aggressive scenario from the GFS. That is the strongest system that we're watching. Also, I do think there is a potential for a little bit of snowfall as we get into this weekend and into Monday of next week across the Northeast. We have been talking about a signal for a potentially secondary low to develop just off the coast, which could bring a little bit of snowfall into some of these areas. So I definitely watch out for that. Once again, could cause a little bit of slippery travel, but nothing much other than that. But if you look at it, I want to show you guys past runs on the GFS. I'll show you what different scenarios we've been talking about. There is that signal for that low pressure, and once again, it's very, very far south. So that's why we're talking about the potential for this to be pretty far south. But that brings snow all the way down to southern Arkansas. A little bit more snow into Dixie Alley, and once again, that moves into the northeast. But if you look at, let's look at the 60 here. The 60 also shows a pretty decent winter storm with this, and it takes a little bit longer, but you see a lot of icing that spreads across sections of Georgia into, Dixie Alley. I will say right now, freezing rain is going to be a huge problem with these storms because of how big of a signal we've been talking about from the models, not only GFS, but, ensemble runs and also the European model. Okay, they've been all agreeing on a major signal for a lot of freezing rain accumulation across the southeastern United States from some sort of storm system that we're watching here right around the 22nd to the 24th of January here. So I think we're going to have to continue to monitor this, but I do think that this is definitely going to bring pretty widespread impacts. But I mean, look at what the 6Z brought. The 6Z had a full-blown, blizzard out here in upstate New York, this would likely be a bomb cyclone. You have a pretty gigantic storm system as that rises in the northeast, and I will say, if we do see some kind of scenario like that, we also could have a pretty intense interior northeast storm system. But you look at the runs from yesterday in the GFS to show you how different it was. This brought a much more impactful winter storm for the southern United States, and it brought, once again, more freezing rain very far south. Okay, so I think it is possible that we still could get a pretty impactful winter storm for the southern United States. But obviously, I'd also watch that signal for the eastern United States there if that low does end up moving up the east coast. So pretty far out still. Obviously, it's over 150 hours out on the GFS, so take all of this with a grain of salt. But this is a very, very strong signal picked up by multiple major models here, and also the ensemble runs, which are typically more reliable because it doesn't just include one operational run. This includes all of the members that puts out the GFS basically. So you have 51 members of the GFS that kind of make up the ensemble, and you basically put those together, and you look at what those kind of show all together, and that basically gives you your ensemble runs. So it's just a little bit more reliable because you have all the members, if that makes sense. But even those, even the ensemble runs have been showing the signal for a snowstorm. So that's why we're talking about a little bit far out. All right, and then really we don't see another huge signal for a snowstorm behind it. I mean, this is when we're getting really far out. Okay, but this is the snowstorm to watch. I think that this is definitely going to. I think we're going to get a storm system. It definitely could not. It might not be as impactful as what we're seeing on the latest runs. But I do think somewhere in here we could get a pretty major winter storm. I think that it's going to be very, very possible just with how much cold air we have coming in behind it and how much we'll have in front of it. All right, so now you look at the European model. Now, what does the European model show? Well, it does bring that storm system into the northeast. There's your little quick hitting winter storm for Sunday night into Monday morning. But watch what happens behind it. Right behind it, as we get into next week. All right, there's that low pressure that starts to form out there into the southern United States, and all of a sudden you have a signal for that same storm system the GFS was talking about. Now, the European does bring this a little bit further south. It struggles to push this low, farther north. At this point, it'd probably end up turning north if it were going to go into the northeast. So this would be a much more favorable scenario for the southern United States, and this brings a full-blown winter storm for the Carolinas, Georgia, Dixie Alley, and pretty close to the Gulf Coast here. All right, but look at all that freezing rain right in between. This is another big signal from not only GFS, but also the European model for freezing rain. So that's why this is pretty concerning. But that was the 18Z. Look at the 12Z so we can go a little bit further. Well, this is the afternoon run, and it shows once again another signal for a southern hitting winter storm, and that also does struggle to move into the northeast. So there's a little bit of disagreement there from the models. What does the 6Z show? Well, the 6Z also doesn't go that far out, but it does start to show that, kind of the formation of that event. And you look at the OOZ, and it does also show that event. So a lot of pretty wild scenarios are possible, but I really have high confidence that we will see a pretty significant winter storm for some of these areas. Now, it might not be that far south, but I think that this could be a good one for Dixie, for the Carolinas. But I also do think, obviously, freezing rain is going to be a huge part of these winter storms, and just kind of causing that very disruptive travel and just those very, very slick roads. And I do think that this is definitely going to be a pretty hazardous event if we do end up getting a pretty major winter storm. So this brings us to our GEFS. This is our GFS ensemble here. We're going to look at the 24-hour snowfall totals. So first of all, you want to look at the ensemble runs because, once again, it includes all those members that build up the GFS. And you also want to look at the 24-hour snowfall to kind of give you guys an idea of what the signals for snow. You don't really want to look at totals because those are very unreliable when you're talking about long range here. But you look at it and you can start to see the formation of that storm system. There it is. This is a 24-hour snowfall, and you can actually see that kind of work its way through the southern United States. There's that signal that the GFS ensemble is picking up on a couple of inches of snow in some of these areas. Now, we're not talking about totals. This is not a forecast, but there is a signal for the deep south. I mean, we're talking about close to the Gulf Coast to see snowfall here. So, pretty wild stuff on the GFS ensemble there, and that continues to move out. So that was the 18Z. That was the overnight run, or the evening run. You look at the afternoon run. This is the 12Z. Does it show a stronger signal? Well, you pull this out, and you can see it does also pick up on that signal as it kind of starts to deepen into Texas, and it does, for the most part, show a little bit of a bigger signal there. But this is just the reason I'm showing this is just to give you guys an idea that I'm not, just saying this to get clicks and views. I'm saying this because multiple models are picking up on this. We're talking about the GFS ensemble, so all of the members that build up the ensemble run. We're talking about the European model, operational, and the GFS. So all three of these major runs have been picking up on that southern snowstorm, which is starting to be a little bit less far out. So we're going to have to start talking about these details with this. But there's a pretty large signal for a relatively major ice storm or snowstorm that could be hitting very, very far south there. So for the last part of the update, I do also want to talk about quickly what our pattern is going to look like, because this is also going to kind of shape up what our possibility for snow is going to look like here. So this also kind of gives you guys an idea of what that, Arctic blast, why it's moving so far south. Well, you can see this is our jet stream right now. You see these warm colors here. This is where we're seeing the warmer temperatures, and these colder colors is where we're seeing the colder temperatures. So your jet stream is pretty much all the way up into Alaska at this point, and then all the way back up into Atlantic Canada. This is just an absolutely crazy pattern that you have here. But you have pretty much a ridge coming out of the the northern Pacific, that's kind of bumping up into far northeastern Canada, into Alaska there, and then you finally do get your Arctic air that pretty much just dives southward, and the polar vortex is just completely spilled in the northern United States at this point. So this is your pattern now. It's a very, very active pattern, which means that you're going to get a lot of energy that will ride the jet stream here. But this continues just to deepen as that cold air from the polar vortex continues to move its way down farther south. At the same time, that ridge will continue to spike up into Alaska there, just creating this really favorable pattern for more and more cold air to move down into the United States. But this is just once again to draw it out. This is your jet stream now. We very rarely see it get this far south, but basically, you just have a pretty good path for all this cold air to come right down into the United States. And at the same time, you obviously have your ridge going up into the western sections of Canada, all the way up into Alaska. So, very wild stuff, very active pattern, but that's all I got for you guys. Thank you all for coming to watch. I will see you guys in the next video, so stay tuned. There will be more updates from me coming up. I will try my best to get them out as frequently as possible. We're gonna have to watch that southern snowstorm possibility. I also think, obviously, freezing rain is gonna be a possibility. All right, but if you're being affected by those wildfires in California, obviously stay safe out there. Make sure you are paying attention to all evacuation orders, and also, if you're being impacted by the dangerously cold weather, stay warm. Make sure you're not you're not outdoors for too long, because obviously hypothermia and frostbite is going to be a huge possibility, especially where you're talking about real fields that could be as low as -40 degrees. So that's all I got for you guys. Thank you all for coming to watch, and I'll see you guys in the next video.